and gentlemen, my name is Rohan Malik, and I'm here to talk to you all today about why I believe that millennial diplomacy is the way forward. And it's something that I feel really passionately about. It's something that I have been sort of thinking about for a long time. So today my talk will consist of anecdotes, of stories and ideas, some data, some statistics, to really show you why I believe that the future of the next generation of authors and writers and diplomats and presidents will be from our generation. They will be the generation that will make that change. So on the slide behind me, there are 3 images. And I'd like you all to take a couple of seconds just to look at the images, make some correlations in your mind. So just take a couple of seconds and just have a look at these images. All right, so what ostensibly appear to just be 3 images, one representing the logo of a Model United Nations conference, one is a screenshot of a website, and one is a picture of 2 guys. What they actually represent are 2 really, really strong ideas. One is the idea of millennials, and one is the idea of diplomacy, which is, I think we're both pretty self-explanatory. So I'm a millennial, along with 2.5 billion other people in the world. And I think that we've reached a fundamental turning point in history where we can change the construct of conflict, and we can change the construct of race relations and inequality and poverty in the world. And the reason for that is because we have 3 fundamental characteristics that really differentiate us, the current generation, people aged between 13 and 30 right now, from the rest of the world. And that is that we are connected, we are very well informed, and the fact that we have the innovation and the innovative capability to completely change the scope of the way we exchange ideas. So we have this really wonderful thing which is really, really insulted in everyday life. That is the social media. And I think that the wonderful thing about social media is that it gives us the opportunity to exchange experiences and exchange anecdotes and exchange thoughts and hypotheses. But what really it gives us the ability to do is it gives us the ability to exchange ideas. And this TED era we live in today, where we really need to trust our ideas enough to share them with the rest of the world. I think that's what really enables our generation to make that change in the future. Also, we have, and this is the first things that I notice, is the way we see the news. And the news is very different. So it's not restricted to just that sort of black and white, context-driven, our socio-economic situation, our socio-political situation. It's not really restricted to that. What we have now is the freedom to really explore an array of ideas and explore an array of thoughts and experiences with other people. So I'm going to start with 3 stories. My talk will center itself around 3 stories. And the first story is about 2 people. These are 2 people I had the chance to meet last year. The gentleman on the left, his name is Pearl. He is 21 years old. He holds a bachelor's degree in theology from a liberal arts university. He has a smartphone. He reads the BBC on his phone every morning. Very into what's happening in the Middle East. Is a devout Christian. The person on the right, his name is Gap. He is 17 years old. He just finished his military service. He's very, very active on Facebook. He has 152 likes on his profile picture, and he shares a lot of things that are relevant to his community on his Facebook page. The thing is that Pearl lives in a refugee camp on the southwest border, on the southeast border, of Burma, and has never really exited the camp until last year, where I had the chance to meet him. And Gap is a Thai student who lives on the opposite side. And both countries have a very long history of conflict, and they've both been at war with each other for a very, very long period of time. So I had the opportunity last year to go at the Initiative for Peace conference, which was run by UWC, where both Dover and East students go. We went to a place called Mysore, which is in Thailand, and we had the opportunity to interact with them. And after training from UN, people who worked at the UN, people who worked, counselors, psychiatrists, I was faced with a situation where these 2 people who lay on opposite sides of conflict were sharing a room, essentially. So they'd stepped to, so I thought that there would be a confrontation, I thought there'd be some tension, but actually I was born witness to the fact that animosity was set aside because they started talking about their phones. They said, hey, you have that phone, oh, that's cool, are you on Facebook as well? Or you have Angry Birds, I bet I can beat you at Angry Birds. And within seconds, that tension, that animosity was broken. And that was really one of the defining moments for me, was when I realized that maybe there's something else. Maybe there's something that is so within us, that within this generation, within millennials, that really let us exchange ideas and let that international barrier that was once a hindrance to diplomacy, or traditional diplomacy, it just sort of was done away with. And the history behind that conflict, what astonished me was how easily they stepped away from their situation of conflict. So 96,206 is the total amount of people who live in Pearl's refugee camp. And upwards of 106 deaths is the amount of people who've died in this conflict last year. And we actually had the opportunity to meet people who had actively participated in this conflict. But what was amazing was the fact that they were so easily to step away from that bubble and from that space and really talk to each other as they were normal people, and made our job as peacekeepers and facilitators much easier. A second experience, so I was made to think about how this international barrier was overcome. And a second experience which took place around about the last day was we'd been doing an activity with both sides, and it was a really sensitive time, and I walked in late because I think I was taking a shower and I was just slacking. And I got in late, and it was a situation of tension, and everyone was crying, and they'd done a really emotional activity, and they said, listen, because you were the last one here, can you cheer everyone up? And I remember introducing myself as an Indian on the first day, and within seconds people were like, oh, India, Shah Rukh Khan, yeah, Bhangra, woo! And what was wonderful was that within about a minute and a half, we were able to download a standard Bhangra track. And with people who just cried and put their arms around each other and say, oh, I love you so much, and we should make the world a better place, within seconds we were able to turn that around and use popular culture as a way to really bring them together. And at the end, we had a room full of people, not just from both sides of conflict, but people from Kenya, and people from Hungary, and people from Poland and Norway, and all the other facilitators dance along to something that I thought was just unique to our culture, but people had actually watched Bollywood movies in Thai and in their native languages all over the world. So the first thing I'd like to suggest to you all is the fact that maybe popular culture is a way to bring countries together, where historically an effort was made after World War I to form the League of Nations, after World War II to form the United Nations, to promote trade, we formed the WTO. Maybe countries are coming together now and using popular culture as that leveler to bring other countries together. The second story I'm about to tell you so it goes back to when I was about 6 years old, and I was a child, and I'd go with my father to a local temple near his office, and we would donate bread and food and shoes and all the other things to the less fortunate, who would sit outside in a line and would wait. And as a child, it was really difficult for me because they would sort of grab at me and pull at me, but it was very, very humbling, and it taught me the importance of giving. And that sort of stopped as school started, and towards one of my last MUN conferences, where I'd done about 24 or so conferences afterwards, and it was one of my last as a delegate, so I was really, really proud of myself, and I thought I knew it all. And there was this, I was representing China, and there was someone representing the United States of America, and he was battering me. He was just brilliant. His resolutions more realistic than me, and his repartee was on point, and he was just wonderful. And he actually won Best Delegate, and I didn't win. And I went up to him and shook his hand at the end, and I said, oh, good job, whatever, well done, man. And he said, do you not recognize me? And I said, no, I don't recognize you. And he said, you used to come and visit me every Tuesday, and your dad still does. He was someone who lived in a slum behind the temple, and his family used to beg for food, and still did. But he'd won a scholarship to attend an international school, and he had the opportunity to take up MUN. And I mean, for me, it just completely blew my mind how someone who still lived in that circumstance, but as a millennial, who had those three characteristics, he wanted to change the world. And I asked him, I mean, in the most polite way possible, I said, how did you manage that? And he said something that still resonates with me, and I still think about when I think about wanting to become a diplomat in the future. He said, your Google is my Google, and my Google is your Google. And you may have a car, and you may have a big house, and I may not have those things. But what I do have is this little laptop which I won on my scholarship, and we have the same internet. We share the same resources. We have the access to the same ideas. And in that way, diplomacy really overcame that socio-economic barrier. So through IFP, I saw how popular culture was able to overcome an international barrier. And through this example, I was able to see how, an MUN is an exchange of ideas, and it's an exchange, and it's a way of putting yourself in another country's perspective, in that context, and really talking about issues that matter to the world. And he was able to do so despite his living situations, and he really wanted to make that change in the world. And I think he's flying out in a week or so to attend his first conference in Beijing. So that's just another story. The third story that's a screenshot from a website, which a couple of friends and I started, and it still runs. And it's called Amalgamated, and essentially it is what it's called. It's an amalgamation of ideas and perspectives. And we started it as a way to inform the youth of India, because 17.3 million of us are turning 18 this year. And so we're all voting for the first time. So it started off as a way to really tell everyone in India about what elections are, what the different parties are. But it's slowly expanded. Now we do poetry and pop culture and dance and music. And the section that I edit and I write for, which is the International Affairs and Politics section. And what Amalgamated taught me was, because we had the chance to interact with a lot of people, and we had to do a lot of reading before we made the pitch for the website. And I read a study which said that 50% we trust user-generated content, up to 50% more than we trust official content. Which means you wouldn't go, if you would read about an airstrike, you wouldn't just read the numbers and all of that, but you're 50% more likely to scroll to the op-ed section and to see what people have to say about it. So in my style of writing, if I were to write about an airstrike, and I have, we actually wrote from the perspective of someone who lived in the village that was struck, the country that was conducting the strike, the nation that was being struck, so that people have these different ideas, different perspectives, and the comment section below, which is filled with comments and different perspectives and ideas and hypotheses and experiences that really combine to form one large perspective, which we are very proud of and we're very comfortable sharing. Because a lot of people who I'd interacted with after they'd read the article said, we aren't really comfortable if you just give us stats. We aren't really comfortable if you just give us data. But what we do like, and what we do think is cool, is when you give us the opportunity to read a bunch of stuff. And for me, as someone putting myself in the perspective of a 9-year-old schoolgirl whose school had just been bombed, it was difficult, but what it also taught me was how easy it is to find those perspectives. If you just go online and go to websites like this, and there will be websites in the future, and I'm sure there are other websites that are present, and really put yourself in other people's shoes. I know that everyone aged between 13 and 30 in the audience today will do that, and we're prone to do that because we are the generation that will drive change in the future. So I have 3 questions for you to conclude my talk. The first is, does diplomacy have to restrict itself to a face-to-face interactions? Given that we do have these platforms and we do have these opportunities where we can exchange ideas freely, does it have to be that traditional, in the capital city in London or in Beijing or in New Delhi, with people in suits talking about foreign policy and trade agreements and stuff like that? Does it really have to be that? Because this generation is practicing diplomacy on the internet, and we're doing it every single day, knowingly and unknowingly. The second question is, what is the fundamental change that's taken place with diplomacy? And I've said this to a lot of people, and it bothered them because they thought they were clued up about current events and about history. The fundamental change, in my opinion, and my idea really preaches this, is the fact that in the next 20 years, the kids with the skinny jeans and the headphones and the club music and all of that, we're the ones who will be in the suits wearing, talking about trade and talking about international agreements, and we will be the ones driving that change. Because millennials have something so distinct about them. And these 3 experiences really told me that. They told me that there's something so different about all of us that really sets us apart. So is the address of diplomacy changing? Is the heart of diplomacy in the world still on East 52nd Street, New York, which is the headquarters of the UN? Or in Brussels, which is the headquarters of the EU? Or in Geneva, where the UNHCR is located? It's not that. It's the address of diplomacy, in my opinion, is changing and is coming to the World Wide Web, and it's coming to a much wider forum where it's more approachable, where we can put ourselves in the shoes of the diplomats. We can become the diplomats sitting in our underwear on Facebook at 2 a.m. We can do that, and that bothers so many people when I say that. So let's come back to the first slide. Let's come back to the ideas that there are 3 things. There was MUN, there was Amalgamated, and then there was my experiences on the border of Thailand and Burma. So I want to end with 3 ideas that the idea of millennial diplomacy really concludes with. The first is, why can't we have more IFPs? Why can't we have more opportunities to build bridges with people in conflict? And IFP has gone to Kashmir, IFP has gone to Timor-Leste, and will continue to do so for the next 50 years, but that's just restricted to UWC. Why can't we have more conferences all over the world which really drive change, because we are the generation that will change the world. I hate to break it to you, generation before us and the one before that and the one before that, depending on how old the people in the audience are. We have that capability, and we have the opportunity to change the world, and we will do so. I promise you we will do so. The second is, why don't we set up more websites where we can exchange ideas, since the internet is so popular and we're always on our phones and our iPads and all of that stuff. Why can't people from Kashmir and Kyoto and Karachi and Beijing and London and South Africa, why can't we exchange ideas and we exchange perspectives and the impact that it'll have on our lives? Because different international things do that. MUN has taught me that every single international event has repercussions in our own country and in our own lives, somehow, some way. Even if it's the way you're treated at an airport, it's the way that people see you when you go abroad, it's the way that the color of your skin is judged. Something, somehow, every international event has some repercussion on our lives. And I think that it's really, really important that we have that opportunity to really exchange those ideas. And finally, can we have more MUNs? Can we have MUNs where we're given real issues? Where the UN and large international bodies trust the youth for their fresh ideas and their fresh perspectives and all of that, to really come up with solutions, even if it's just one solution. Is if they look for the fresh new perspective that will drive change in the world. Why can't we have that in the world today? So I'd like to conclude with a really cheesy closing, which is, we are millennials, we are change, and we are the ones that will drive diplomatic change, political change, socio-economic change, and overcome all the issues in the world, because we have the unique capability of being connected, of being informed, and being innovative. Thank you very much.